2 panels and 2 keynotes, and then we'll have the simulation from yesterday, but I hear today is a bit harder, so I think Mr. Fidelis will give us more context on that. Yeah. So our first keynote of the day is the amazing Mr. Fidelis Moya. Karibu sana, sir. Mr. Fidelis is the Director of Technical Services in the Kenya Bankers Association. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes here. He is responsible for the coordination of industry initiatives.
The kind ones. Good morning, everyone. I will not be asking the Maswalis today. I'll just be talking about incidence management. As I set up the technology, should be it. I think it should work. All right, great, it's working. So I would like to share a few thoughts about incidence management, a very, very big component of cybersecurity resilience. We will basically discuss what is an incident. Just focus on the negative effects. And why we need to have an incident management is essentially to make Of course, as you give your services, you want to ensure that users stay satisfied with your business. That is why you need to manage your transparency in your processes and expectations of consumers. They need to know exactly what is happening. So you have to have a consistent way of managing incidences to ensure that certain expectations are met. Of course, resolution times, if you don't have a process of managing your incidences, obviously, you can't tell how long an incident should take or how long a service should be able to work, and escalating incidences need to be monitored in a process manner. Then, of course, inability to document solutions, because if you have incidences that keep recurring, historical context must be maintained so that if you know something that happened in the past, you should really have a document to say what you should do in such situations to save yourself time and effort. And then, of course, we were talking about customer satisfaction. If you have a process for managing incidences, customers have confidence in you, and therefore dissatisfaction is minimized because they have an expectation that you will handle it in a very consistent manner. Then, of course, you will mitigate the higher risk of disrupting businesses if you have a way of every member of your team knowing how to handle situations. Then disruptions are minimized, because when something happens, everybody in your team should know exactly what to do. And then we have benefits in terms of assigning tickets to technical staff. You can have accountability for problems. You've heard the stories of where everybody is expecting to solve a problem, but nobody solved it because everybody was expecting and nobody did it. So that is where you need to have accountability by assigning somebody a ticket to ensure that either he finishes. If he is not, at least we know, and we can help them achieve the objective. Then we need to maintain a knowledge base so that we can have a repository of all our incidences, both for historical learning and also for ensuring that we maintain a knowledge base of known problems and how to resolve them, so that when they happen, we again minimize the time it will take to deal with an incident. So if we look at the life cycle, there are different definitions of the life cycle. This first one I picked from the ETIL definition, where they talk about incidents logging, where you can deploy different systems to capture your incidences. You can have a help desk system, you can have people call, you can have an email, or etc. Then once the incident is logged, somebody reviews it and decides whether it's something that needs to be given a ticket for resolution, and then they raise a ticket, and that is when it enters into your system to be tracked. Then once it is raised as a ticket, there will be somebody who will give it a priority. Not every incident requires the same level of attention and priority. So we will categorize them based on should it be dealt as a business problem or is it an IT problem. If it's an IT problem, then we give it a priority. Is it a critical problem that needs to be addressed, as in drop everything and deal with this one? Is it a high priority where maybe somebody needs to look at it but it doesn't stop things happening? Is it medium where maybe there's some level of concern but not to be worried? And if it is low priority, maybe we'll do it when the systems, when business is slow and we have time. So that is how you prioritize the attention you need to give the item. Then after it is resolved, you basically need to ensure that the resolution is documented. And there are ways of looking at, in terms of incidence management, the incidence resolution. It doesn't have to fix the problem, because the key job of an incidence management is to ensure business continues. So if I have a problem and the process has stalled, the job of the incident person is to just make sure the process goes on. So there is a way you can actually give a temporary fix which allows business to continue, and according to you, that incident has been resolved. Now, if it is a simple incident, you can have a permanent fix. If it's something that you knew before, you can give a permanent fix because you quickly go to the knowledge base, pick the resolution and fix. But if it is a complicated thing, you don't want to start looking for a permanent fix when the incident is basically playing out. All you want to do is make sure business continues, give it a resolution, and then you can hand it over to the other level of support, which becomes the problem management. We'll be discussing that a bit earlier. So the major job of an incident management process is to keep business moving. Then you can close the incidents once either the process has resumed, you close the incident, and you need to close that with the user's acceptance. You don't just decide to close because you think you fixed the problem. You need to talk to the users and give them the solution, and once they accept, that's when you can close the resolution or the incident. Other definitions, when we get technical, there is a process called triage. Those of us who have kids and have gone to Gertrude's Children's Hospital know When you get in, the first thing they do is they take your kid, they weigh the kid, they take temperature, the normal things before you even decide what the problem is. That is the process that is known as triage. And during that triage process, you decide, is this a serious thing? Do we need to go to the emergency room, or is it something they can sit and wait and give the priority? And the response time is basically targeting to minimize the damage. Basically, the job, it's like a risk mitigation process. You're basically minimizing the impact of this incident to ensure that you can contain the situation, and you need to then keep the business moving even as you escalate. Now, there are certain situations where you can escalate because you have not been able to get a temporary solution. So you escalate to second level, and then you raise the importance and criticality of the incidents. Now, if things get totally out of hand and the system actually doesn't work, that's when you resort to what we know as business continuity process, where you invoke the BCP. Maybe you have a backup process, you resort to a manual process if it was an automated process. But the idea is to keep business moving, so business has to continue working. Then the final process is looking at restoring the service. After everything, the incident has been handled, then you restore service. And only after you've restored service do you then report the attack to stakeholders, or you can report once the business has been disrupted to alert people that there's an incident and you are managing, and you tell them what it is you are doing. And then you provide progress reports. So if it's an incident that takes maybe 5 minutes, you may not want to give progress reports. But if it's a longer learning process in a critical system, you probably will be giving maybe 1 hourly update as you continue working on the resolution, or half-hourly update. So depending on the seriousness and the criticality of the business, you can determine how frequent the updates will take. And then as you give the update status, you always make sure it is documented and it is given to all the stakeholders. At the end of the whole process, you have to then file in a resolution report to say exactly how you resolved the issue, and we will discuss that later on in terms of what you should include in your report. So who are the stakeholders or actors? The first one is the end user, and the end user's job is to provide the information according to the incident, say what they saw, provide as much information as possible to facilitate resolution. The second one is they need to follow up the incident. They shouldn't just report an incident and sit down, because it is their business at the end of the day. So they need to be invested in the whole process to ensure that if they don't get timely updates, they can actually query and say exactly what is happening, please provide an update, so that their business is taken. A lot of the situations we see in organizations, especially very large organizations, is people log in an incident report and then they use that as a reason not to do something. So when the boss comes and says, why isn't this job getting done? You say it's because we had a problem and we raised a ticket, and that's the end of it. When the boss asks, so what has the help desk said? You say, we are waiting for an update. So the user's job is to ensure they follow, to ensure that somebody is actually giving attention to their issues. Then we have what is known as Tier 1 help, or a help desk, where you log in problems. The job of that team participant is basically to assign tickets to the support staff. They are the first point of contact between the help desk and the end user, and they are the ones who analyze the incidents and resolve and restore service. They are the ones who follow up, and then they verify the resolution of the problem with the user to ensure that the user is happy and they that the incident is a problem, and if it is a problem, then they create what is known as a problem ticket. There is a slight definition, or a slight different definition of a problem and an incident, and we will discuss that a bit more in detail. Then they also provide subject matter experts. So these are more technically people, and they are more experts in the systems and in their area of technology expertise. So they will be more experienced and knowledgeable than the tier 1. Then we have the incident manager, whose job it is to make sure that the service desk or help desk runs properly. Their main responsibility is to plan and facilitate the whole of the management process, and they coordinate and communicate with the business owner about anything of the aspects of the incident management process, and they are the ones who identify the incidences for review, basically to see where the lessons learned and where the systems and processes can be improved based on the results of the incident's resolution. And finally, you have the business owner, whose job is to take over the whole accountability of the process. So those are the main stakeholders in the whole of the processing management. When we narrow down to cybersecurity, the incident response plan, how you develop one, you basically have a phase where you have a preparation phase, and you have to define what constitutes a cybersecurity incident. Not every IT incident is a cybersecurity incident, so you need to identify, and all players need to understand what is the definition of a cybersecurity incident, so that they do not take resources and time reporting things that really shouldn't be reported as cybersecurity incidents. After it is reported, we need an identification phase, and that means we have to have a process. Everybody in the organization knows, how am I going to report a cybersecurity incident? There's a process, and everybody should be familiar with the process, so that then it is, number one, very quick. Number two, it is very structured, and everybody is able to predict what should happen and where to report. Finally, there is the containment phase, where you have your response plan. If it is reported using this process, what is our response plan? What are we going to do? If, for example, we declare there is a cybersecurity incident in this room, do we know where the exits are? That is our response plan. If there is a fire in this place, do we know where the fire exits are? Do we know how we are going to evacuate the building? That is your response plan. Then you have the eradication phase, where you now bring in the technical people to come and deal with the resolution of the problem and ensure that the problem is resolved and business is brought back into process. And then after that, you have a recovery phase, where you now gather the evidence to document the process, document what happened, document whatever incident resolution processes you have, and communicate the same to all players. So that's, in a nutshell, what should be in a cyber response plan. Now, when you talk about cybersecurity incidents management, when you're developing a program, you always start with an awareness program, because cybersecurity, we all yesterday agreed, is everybody's business. So you need to have an awareness plan. Awareness is basically where everybody is aware of the situation. You have training for the people to know exactly what needs to be done. And then you have education for your team members to basically be educated in the whole process. And the management focus should be, number one, to manage and facilitate the process. One of the biggest problems of getting technical people to head incident management is they start getting involved in the resolution and start second-guessing the resolution team and basically checking what happened, because they believe they are knowledgeable. As a manager, your job is not to resolve. Your job is to facilitate the process, make sure your team have the resources, and they are actually able to do their job. Number two is, as a manager, you're supposed to know at what point in the process you make a decision. Some of us who participated in the exercise yesterday know we can actually talk a problem to death by basically discussing. So your job as a manager is to make sure that at some point you stop discussing and make a decision. So you ask for the information, collect the information, and make a decision. Because the business needs to keep moving, you need to make a decision. What are we going to do? So you have to have a clearly mapped out decision points in the whole process. So you know, if we resolve or we start looking at a problem and it's a critical problem, if in 30 minutes we don't know what the problem is, somebody needs to make a decision. Do we go to BCP, let the technical problem team manage that thing, and let's invoke business continuity to continue business? Somebody needs to make that decision, and it has to be documented whose decision it is, so that, number one, we know who it is. Number two, they can actually do the decision and be empowered. And number three, they can actually be held accountable for that decision. Then If it is a problem that is taking long, we need to know how to escalate and at what point to escalate. A lot of our technical guys don't want to admit defeat. So there's a problem, they start looking at resolving, they reboot the PC 100 times thinking that they'll get the same result differently. Sometimes you just say, listen, this is beyond us, let's escalate this. Stop doing this, let's escalate. So somebody needs to know at what point do we escalate. And then all processes in your business should have a BCP. A BCP is not for the whole business. So you look at all your critical businesses, develop a BCP for each process so that at any time, at any point in time, you have a business process that has its own BCP. So that in the event you want to invoke, everybody knows this is the process of invoking this, and it is documented, and everybody can then be able to follow it. The focus of your job as a manager is to facilitate the business moving. So a lot of people think my job as a technical service desk is to resolve problems. No. Your business is to actually support the business, maintain its operations. So you need to always, as a manager, focus on where the business is going, what are we doing, and how are we going to support that business by resolving incidences to ensure business works. Now, we discussed about incident management and problem management. Let's discuss a problem. If you have an incident that keeps recurring every so often, then it becomes a problem. An incident that occurs only once, an event that occurs once, is you say that's an incident, we deal with it. But if it keeps coming back every time, because we resolve, maybe it's a temporary fix every time we give it, it comes, we give a temporary fix, then it becomes a problem, and that needs to be escalated through a process known as problem management, where you get expert guys to really look at this and dig down and identify exactly what is causing this problem, and how do we then fix it so that it doesn't keep interrupting our business. So you need to look at, as a manager, how do we handle an incident and how do we escalate it to become a problem? Because the resourcing that it requires for problem is much, much deeper than the resources you require for handling incidents, and the resolution time for a problem is much, much longer because you will take time to dig into a lot of other processes that then identify a root cause. Then root cause analysis itself, you really need to focus on that because you are looking at digging deep to identify the causes of a problem. And then the problem management process is what will help us improve, because after identifying a root cause of the problem, then you now go back into your processes and improve your processes. Either change them, document them better, or address the root cause to ensure that we continuously learn from our problems and ensure that we resolve them, they don't recur. If you are good guys, I'll tell you an incident that became a problem in my life and how it works. So now, we now look as a manager. As a manager, your performance is evaluated and you always need to demonstrate that you are able to show how you are using the resources. And we have quite a number of metrics that work. The first one is the incident metrics, where you have incident statistics and the trends. This basically is you keep statistics of all the incidences in a month. For example, if you are working in a cybersecurity help desk, you need to demonstrate how many incidences did we receive in a month, in a week, or in a year, in a quarter. And then the trends. Are they increasing? Are they decreasing? Part of the effectiveness, or the way you can tell whether your awareness program is actually working, is the number of incidences. For example, at the end of this conference, when the Communications Authority has its awareness, at the end of it, if your awareness is effective, you should actually see a spike in the number of incidences reported. If you don't see a spike in the number of incidences reported, one of two things happened. Either your awareness was not properly designed, so it didn't communicate the message, or whatever you are communicating is not a problem. So if you tell people, worry about fire, and you give people fire awareness, and at the end of the day, nobody reports about a fire, then maybe there wasn't a problem with fire, isn't it? But if you have incidences, for example, about malware and phishing, and you sensitize your staff about the incidences, and you see a sudden number of incidents reports, that means the awareness campaign is actually working effectively. because people are reporting. Now, whether the report is genuine or not, at least you know people are now conscious that yes, this could be potentially a problem. So the number of reports will indicate that your awareness is working. Then the trends, you will start seeing patterns in terms of how your behavior within the organization. The number of incidences will tell you the patterns. It will also tell you the number of attacks and the kind of attacks that are coming through your environment. So it is very important for you to manage that, to ensure that you can now proactively develop your program to be prepared for the trends and also predict certain situations and preempt them. Then the resolution metrics, this will tell you about your team performance. How quickly are they turning around your resolutions? How quickly are they resolving incidences? How many incidences are being escalated? Because the biggest problem some organizations have is they have interns working at the service desk because they are the ones who log your incidences. But then that means the quality of triage. You remember we were talking about prioritizing incidences and all. If you have a very inexperienced person prioritizing your incidences, then clearly the effectiveness of your team will be affected because either they will use very critical resources dealing with useless or trivial issues, and then you are now basically wasting your resources, or they may not adequately look at the situation and give it the importance it deserves. So you need to look at that matrix and see. You need to balance the people who sit at your front customer-facing teams and see how effective they are at identifying problems. Then, of course, how many resolutions do we get? Is your team escalating all the problems? When I was in IT support, we used to call our supervisor a title called a router, because every time customers reported a problem, his job was basically to tell you where deal with that, where deal with that. So we were asking, what is his job here? He's just a router by routing problems. And he's the one who's supposed to look at these problems, prioritize them, and say which one is more important and which one should I allocate. So you need to make sure that your team, you are actually getting the performance metrics that identifies who is performing and who is not. Then within the organization, you also have SLAs. So the incident reporting metrics you collect will tell you how your service level performance is working. So for example, we have the failure downtimes. How many incidences led to a BCP? How many incidences led to an escalation? How many were resolved within the SLA time? How many were resolved outside the SLA? And that will give you as a manager the insights into whether you need to retrain your team, whether you need to resource, and whether your processes are actually efficient. Then there is the effective matrix, where we are talking about your program's effectiveness. How effective is your program? I mean, how are we resolving our incidences? What is the customer satisfaction level we are getting from our users? You should be able to poll your users, and they should give you feedback to tell you, are we satisfied with your service? Do we need to improve, and all that? So those are the things you need to worry about as an incident manager to be able to manage a resilient team. Managing the incident process itself rather than the program, you need to look at why do we record the incidences. We discussed about recording. The first one is for collecting threat intelligence and methods, because this will give your support team, and it will also give your business team ideas about what is happening, what is threatening their business, and your risk management team will then be able to effectively develop programs to deal with those. Then, of course, if you are looking at a problem resolution, the problem resolution team needs to get these incidents reports to basically analyze them to identify the root cause and use them as a basis of their investigations. And then we also need to maintain a knowledge database so that if we have known problems, there's no point of resolving the same incidents by investigating. We simply go to the database, pull it out, and give the resolution. Then for, of course, the process improvement, we always have to have a culture of continuous improvement. So we need to have this so that we can make lessons learned and improve our lessons and improve our processes internally. Another important thing is for legal proceedings and evidence. A lot of the cyber threats nowadays, we are looking at either having a legal implication or us pursuing legal proceedings against the participants or perpetrators. So we need to have a process of collecting forensics for evidence, storing evidence to ensure that we can support the prosecution. a majority of the cases in our court system actually fail because of this exercise here. When you don't handle incidents, or rather the evidence properly, what is known in legal terms, the chain of custody, we then are not very happy because we will not be able to secure prosecution in court. The other day we were discussing with the forensics team why our cases are not successful in court. And the major problem is this. When we take a perpetrator to court, the defense lawyer's job is very, very simple. He doesn't have to prove the innocence of the accused. All he has to do is introduce what is known as reasonable doubt into your evidence. And part of the problem we have here is if you cannot demonstrate to the court the chain of custody of evidence, then all the defense lawyer's job is to point at holes in your prosecution evidence and say, for example, if my laptop had malware and we suspect it was planted by somebody and we escalate it to the SAT team. If the SAT team does not take proper care in terms of the chain of custody of the evidence, all the defense will ask the prosecutor in court is, was this laptop in the hands of somebody else besides Fidelis? And if somebody says yes, it was left at the desk and it is in an open area, then the prosecution will have to demonstrate that nobody else had access to that laptop. But the defense's job is very simple, to ask the magistrate, Your Honor, if it is in an open place, then it means anybody passing here could have had access to the laptop. Therefore, we can introduce reasonable doubt that anybody else could have come here, so we cannot hold Fidelis solely liable for this action because there was opportunity for others. And the case crumbles. So we really need to ensure that our chain of custody is watertight. Then, of course, for resource planning, we make sure that we maintain our resources. Human resources are very, very expensive, and so you need to balance. Do you want your most expensive resources at the front line, or do you want them at the back line? Do you want them to be sitting, looking at trivial things, or do you want them resolving only major incidences? But if you don't have major incidences, why do you have a very expensive resource sitting at the back when your incidences are never escalated? So you need to balance that resource allocation to ensure that you are able to then manage your resources effectively and use them. The other bit is about stakeholder communication. Part of your job as a management is make sure that everybody is basically kept abreast of what your team is doing, what your processes are, and how you communicate within the organization and outside the organization. So, I promised I'll tell you about an incident that became a problem. How many minutes do I have? You not saying. Okay. Sometimes I tend to talk too much. So I'll probably do it during the panel discussion. Okay, thanks.
That was fantastic. Let's do, okay, we can do better, guys. A better round of applause for Mr. Fidelis. If you have an organization, I think you need to get those notes. Cyber incidences are something that I think we are all struggling with, especially being on the other side of the incidents themselves when you're dealing with ransomwares and you have to worry about business continuity and financial implication, legal implications. So if you don't have a cybersecurity incidents plan, I think that's Mr. Fidelis just broke it down in a very, very nice way, okay? So thank you very much. That was fantastic, and I'm glad, he started out, and I feel like you've even answered some of the questions on the panel. But since we are going to be discussing cybersecurity incidents response, I'm going to invite the rest of the panelists. I hope, they're here. I hope they're here. So the next person on my panel is, I think we all know her. We've interacted with her, and she's, part of the team that's very responsible for this event. Banchale Gufu is the Principal Cybersecurity Monitoring and Manager Office at the National Kenya Communication Incidents Response Team. Ideally, the KESAT team. Please give her a round of applause as she approaches the podium. So those hard questions you have about, what the government is doing in regards to, incidents monitoring and response, we have somebody from CA to answer those questions. The next person on my panel is George Muraguri. I don't know if he's here. Is he here? Okay, fantastic. George Muraguri is the Deputy Commissioner responsible for Information, Communication, and Technology in KRA. I need to be best friends with him. I have some tax. Mr. George, karibu sana. The next person on my panel is John Washira. Is he around? Oh, fantastic. Oh, I love that jacket. John Washira is a multi-faced cybersecurity professional with experience in cybersecurity strategy, building technical cybersecurity operation and risk. He's well versed in both the offensive and defensive side of cybersecurity, with a keen interest in understanding adversary, tradecraft, and detection implication. Oh, that's a mouthful. Thank you very much for being here. And last panelist, I think we all know this man, Mr. Fred Wahome. He has to be here. He is the co-founder of the Kenya Cybersecurity Forensics Association. If we didn't have him, it's just a crime. Mr. Fred Wahome, a round of applause as he comes here. His bio is very big. It's very big, but I think it would be better if he introduces or gives us an easier breakdown of what he does. But I'm going to read a few. He's a technology entrepreneur based in Nairobi, over 10 years of experience in managing technology, processes, and people. He's also a mentor, that's for sure. And his interest in ICT, cybersecurity, startups, training and mentoring. So he has everything in those areas. So karibu sana, Mr. Fred Wahome. Thank you guys for being here. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Okay, we're good. Karibuni sana. Mr. Fidelis, that was fantastic. I'm gonna push this on the side. And I feel you've answered some of our questions that we had on the panel. But I think everybody has a different view, so that's what we are going to be talking about today. So thank you very much. We're good to go? So I'm going to start with the deep state, which is the CA, our KESAT. We have to start from there, right? Before we trickle down to organization level incidents, we need to start with the, the KESAT. So I'm going to start with Gufu. So kindly let us know about the national KESAT, what they do, what we should know that we don't know about the KESAT, the role it plays in this country. Ideally, what you're doing, you're selling us the KESAT, yeah? And I think you're the only person here who can actually answer that question. Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Banchale. Yesterday I was talking to Judy and she was like, I don't know KESAT. What is KESAT? I said, okay, fine. Then I'll talk about it. You will hear about it tomorrow, which is today. So KESAT is acronym of Kenya Computer Incident Response Team. I don't know.
Do you have a microphone?
Okay. Oh. Sorry for that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Thank you very much. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we're good.
I'm okay.
Is that audible? Yes, yes.
Audible? Thank you very much. Okay. So KESAT is a multi-agency framework which is responsible for national coordination of issues to do with matters to do with cybersecurity. When I say it's a multi-agency framework, it draws its members. We have technical officers from law enforcement and also technical officer from cybersecurity department, which is within the authority, Communication Authority of Kenya. So actually, before my microphone went off, I was talking about the acronym of KSAT. What is KSAT? KSAT is Kenya Computer Incident Response Team Coordination Center. So I've talked about our members, the technical members. Our function is mostly offering advisories on issues related to matters cybersecurity, coordinating of incident response in collaboration with relevant actors locally, regionally, and also globally. So another function is acting as a trusted point of contact on issues of cybersecurity. So another function of KSAT is gathering and disseminating technical information on computer security incidents. So another one is capacity building, which what we are doing currently. And another one is facilitating the development of public key infrastructure. That is, PKI is the system that generates digital signatures. So we regulate that, we license that. So the main function of, as a national KSAT, we detect, we prevent, and we respond to cyber incidents. So I think Mr. Fidelis have spoke about generally what is incident, how incident plan, and all that. So we will talk on our contest. What happened at National KSAT is if we receive those incidents, we had a triage process. We have our whole procedure which we use. So once we receive, we validate those reports. We have an incident manager who does that mostly with the background of information security. So his function or her function is to, let me just say his or her, yeah. His function or her function is to, coordinate the team in resolution. I think Mr. Fidelis have really talked about this. So once we validate those incidents, then from there now, we have cybersecurity team, the analyst. So they will go through the incidents. They will go into do technical analysis on it. So of course the triage process, prioritizing depending on whether, you see cybersecurity matters, most of them they are urgent, depending on how it is perpetrated. Whether sometimes somebody report that his photo is out there or something, so, and it's doing some funny things, so we have to make sure that we remove that content from the internet. So it depends with the agency, so we prioritize it as Mr. Fidelis has really explained that. So once we do that, that is now the ones which requires technical analysis, but there are some which are criminal in nature. Mm-hmm. The ones which are criminal in nature, usually what we do is, I have talked about the law enforcement, technical law enforcement guys at KSAT, so we forward to them. They do technical analysis, of course they do forensic analysis, they gather evidence and make sure that they are prosecuted until the end, and I'm happy to report that we have prosecuted a number of cases which came to KSAT. Oh, and some of the people are even in jail.
Oh,
yes,
fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically that is it. So at national level, we have our members drawn from law enforcement agencies, and also we have our sector SAT for the government, which is the in charge is the ICT. We have Internet Service Provider, TESPOC. I can see Madam Fiona here, this is our CEO. So we collaborate with her. She's one of the members of National Cybersecurity Committee. And then we have also academia. Professor Meoli Kashovda yesterday was here. Don't know whether he's still in there. Yeah, so we work with them. Mr. Fidel is here, Kenya Bankers Association, all the bank in Kenya. We associate with them through our sector SAT, which is Kenya Bankers Association, among others. Also the utility service like KPLC and water and ETC. So a number of them mobile operators also. So we work with them at national level. At regional level, we work with the other SADs. You see the East African SADs, like Tanzania, Uganda, all the SADs, we work together. We collaborate very well because due to the nature of cybersecurity, the borderless nature of cybersecurity, we usually get incidents which are cross-border. So we have to talk to them, So we have to talk to them to assist in resolution of those incidents. At international level, we collaborate with different agencies. We are members of FAST, Forum for Incident Response Team and Security, Forum for Incident Response and Security Team, which is a global forum where all the SATs are connected to. So once we have, and we are also working with over 55 SATs, where we usually share with them. Like, for example, if we have something, like, for example, we need to exchange with US or even UK, maybe Germany. So ours is just, because we've already established our network, it's just to connect to the SATs there. We have contacts, we talk to them. They resolve very fast because issues of cybersecurity requires fast response. Mm-hmm. It's not like this other which takes years and years and years to resolve. Yeah, so at national level, we also collaborate with major social media, like Facebook, with the Meta now, they are called Meta, so the Facebook, the Instagram, the WhatsApp, and then also the Twitter, among others. Okay. And also we collaborate with major.com domain registrars, so that even Google, because if there are some issues which relate to, somebody just create, I can give an example, somebody just create a Google form where they direct people to that, telling them, Kenyans, we love jobs, so they tell them, oh, if you pay 250 for registration, you're going to get this job. Actually, we've even got an incident, a real incident, where those criminals were imitating a certain organization X within the country. Yeah, so people are so, happy, they want job and all that, the youth. So they realize, wow, okay, let me pay the 250. Yeah. By the time we know, they have accumulated a lot of money from Kenyans. Yeah. And we're able to stop that. Yeah. Actually, I think they were taken to, actually they were taken to court through our law enforcement. Finally, I can see, finally, we have tools, state-of-art tools in our digital forensic lab, which can, analyze those data, analyze those evidence. I can say that if today we get an evidence from an evidence like where you just throw your phone, for example, it's an exhibit, you've thrown it in water. We are able to retrieve, the system that we have is able to retrieve all those information. Okay? Yeah. So we have advanced tools at National KSAT Digital Forensic Lab. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else feel safer now with what they can? Thank you very much. Thank you for having the service, by the way. I think we feel much better knowing that you guys are at the front of this. My next question goes to Fred Wahome. I know you have worked with a couple of organizations when it comes to forensics, incident response. Maybe you can tell us, and for the business people in the panel, in the audience, why it's important to have an incident management plan.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I prefer to use that.
In the mic here? Yeah, these new school things. Sorry. Also, be prepared with your questions.
Thank you for that. Again, I'm Frederick, and I'm honored to be here to share the platform with colleagues and also other great people who are doing great things out there. So I represent the association, as well as I also run a company that provides cybersecurity and forensic association for the last 10 years. And we have come a long way in terms of learning. And when I respond from the association perspective, there are a number of things that we are doing. Courtesy of, we are able to receive so many requests when customers and our members out there have been breached. And when we respond to assist them, we find out that they do not have any baseline, any standard, or even any plan in place to prepare them in advance. And one of our key focus is the SME. And a large number of the SME, especially in Kenya, they do not have a cyber incident response plans. And those who have, they just have it in paper. It has not been implemented yet. Now, from the company side, I'll give you two examples. One, which happened for the last 2 or 3 months, especially the SACCO as an industry. The first one is the SACCO was breached, and they have integrators who have provided them with the APIs, all those things, to facilitate the business transactions. And when the breach happened, the SACCO IT team, they got into the panic. Yet they have a cyber incident response plan, and they even have a team. But when the incident occurred, they never remembered to even activate the plan at all. They even never remembered to activate the team which was responsible. So you find out the IT person is the one who is in cybersecurity. The same IT person is trying to convince the CEO, we need money to buy some forensic tools, we need this. Before they knew it, they were using some open source tools to try and recover, even before thinking about business continuity. So this is the way things are on the ground. It is good to have cyber plans, incident response plan, but the way things are on the ground is very different. And what we are doing, every time someone reaches out, either through the association or through the company, when they reach out and they have experienced a cyber breach, what we do first is try to capacity build them. So what have you done as the first action point? And most of them, you will be surprised. Even a number of them who already have incident response plans in place, they panic. That is the default mode when the IT team have been affected by a cyber breach. So, to summarize all this, it is very important and very key. And it doesn't matter. Our key focus is the SME. Contextualize it and make sure you also leverage on the networks which are in the interest of time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm actually interested to know, with the business people in the audience, who has a cyber incident response plan? my team is not as big as, let's say, a big telco or an association that, handles a lot of companies. Maybe you can also simplifying it to the, to the main people, the key people, members in a cyber incident response, team.
Thank you for that question. So forgive me, I'm recovering from a cold, so my voice may be inconsistent. Yeah, but that is a very important question. So I will give a very quick introduction, just to give you context on my experience. I've worked in a managed services security provider environment, so I've gotten the opportunity to see the threat landscape and the various threats that affect different industries in different verticals. So for example, we have sort of seen a trend in the kinds of threats that financial institutions face. We have also seen other threats that health organizations face. But then when you come back to an organization and you're looking at the team that constitutes the SAT, I think just piggybacking on what Fred just said, the reality on the ground is we've met so many organizations who either do not have an IR plan or who have an IR plan that just exists on paper. So the same question you asked, how many people have an IR plan?
Yeah.
Please make a follow-up question after this. How many people have done tabletop exercises to see how their IR plan actually works? Because that IR plan details who does what, who talks to who when an event happens. And I'm very sure, because of the experience that we've seen in the market, that the number of hands that go up will significantly drop. So you realize that incident response plans are just that. They're just plans that exist in documents. But people do not really appreciate what steps ought to be taken and what is my responsibility as far as incident response is concerned. But some of the critical members who should be in that IR plan, and this assumes so many things, because it depends on your organogram. How many people do you have? What is your level of expertise? How exposed are you to cybersecurity and your threat landscape? But on a very high level, you ought to have the C-level and a representative from the C-level, and that person has to understand the risk of the threats that face that organization, and that is their role. You need to understand, so this threat that we've encountered, how does it impact our organization? What is the extent of this breach? So understand the risk. You also need legal in your team, because you need to know whether, so for example, SAT is here, and especially in the financial services market, you're mandated to report any incidences to the CBK. So you need a person from legal to make sure that you comply in that regard. Then you also need PR. Say you suffer a breach or something happens, because we've now adopted a mantra. It's not if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. We can guarantee you that you'll get hacked at some point. So you need a person from PR or marketing who can manage your customers or your audience, with regard to the industry you're playing. And then you now need the technical team, however that is set up in your organization. So that could be the IR manager or the risk team. So there are a number of assumptions based on how security teams are actually set up. But, again, going back to your question on SMEs and people who may not have a budget to implement some of these things, people like Fred, that's where they exist, people like myself, the MSSPs that are out there, because, the services we've set up are primarily geared to help organizations that cannot afford to set up their own security team or do not have the time to learn everything there is to learn about cybersecurity and the threat landscape. And you'll even find, even the guys who have big wallets, the big boys, we find that they do struggle because they do not really appreciate the amount of time that it will take for an organization to learn its threat landscape. So the response to that is, there's so many MSSPs now. I'll refer to Fred here, so that I don't look like I'm also vouching for myself. But people like Fred, his company, and the services he provides are primarily helped to help companies come up with IR plans, so you have it on paper, and actually test out those plans. So it's like a fire drill. So we have extinguishers, exit points, but they don't help us if we never test them. Yeah. So that's what I'm calling tabletop exercises. Yeah. So we need to have those mechanisms where we simulate, similar to how we have phishing campaigns. Yeah. I think that's now common. So we need to have incident simulations. So it's probably 2 or 3 people in an organization who know that we will be simulating a certain incident, and then we see how we respond. And that should help us get feedback on how well do we understand our IR plan, and how prepared are we in case that was a real incident. So those are some of the ways that I think we should start thinking about.
Fantastic, fantastic. So the tabletop exercises, what you mean is you attack your own company and see how well Precisely. They handle the incidences.
Precisely.
Yeah. But this still poses a question of, for very critical company assets, do you want to do that when let's say you have you have a website, your e-commerce platform, you want to attack your own e-commerce platform, then is it, do I have to worry about business continuity, or do I have to worry about cyber incident? What am I going to prioritize? Yes.
So that's a good question, and the fact that, you put it like that, already there's a gap, because if you have a critical asset, say like a website, in case you're an e-commerce company, then I imagine you should have redundancies. Yeah. So you should have the same version of the same website running on a secondary site, so that if the main one goes down, then you can easily switch over to the other one. Yeah. Or in case of testing things out, you could have a staging environment or a test environment which is a replica of the main site, but you have freedom to play around and tweak and try break things. Because the last thing you want is to imagine that you're secure, and then we call them DX, arrives, and their main site will actually go down, and it will be so unfortunate because you didn't know. So we call them the unknown unknowns. Yeah. So you didn't know what you're suffering from. You don't know where your gaps are. So, to mitigate things like that, you ought to have business continuity processes in place. You need to have redundancies, test sites that, you could use to do vulnerability assessments or penetration tests and see what kind of gaps or threats do our assets or our assets exposed to.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. It's good to know that, you can do redundancy, but you don't have to trade one for the other, business continuity or security. Yeah. So my next question is to Mr. George. Thank you for being here, by the way. So we've come from having a cybersecurity incidents plan to the team, the key players, to a national, to Mr. Fidelis giving us an overview. But then, can you tell us what are the elements of a system, of an incident response system, for the audience to know what the key elements are? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I come from Kenya Revenue Authority, and I would like to start by appreciating everyone being a taxpayer and a contributor to revenue.
You're the reason he's here.
We did meet our target and surpass the target last financial year with a collection of 2.031 trillion shillings. And we are looking forward to your support this financial year.
Come on, guys, let's try that again.
We are looking forward to adding an additional 300 billion shillings or more. Thank you very much. Again, us coming from Kenya Revenue Authority, we are not immune to cyber threats. we have been tested and to some extent tested. And that means that we've been able to be forced to put in systems, processes, and people, including tools that would help us to detect and even protect our infrastructure. We have been in the public domain for a while or some time, but one thing I can assure you as colleagues, Kenya Revenue Authority never loses a coin. That I can assure you. So even those attempts, as they do come, we are assured that we will still recover our money. And there are reasons for that, which Bosbury can explain later. Now, coming back to the incident management system, like one would talk about any other system, there are three components of a system. The first component is people. And the second component is processes. And the last component is technology. So my explanation will deal with those three items. And the first component being people. What do we need to know about people? The first key aspect is, do you have the skills that are required to be able to deal with any cyber incidents? And your team properly trained? Are they properly exposed? Are they properly equipped? Both in terms of tools and in terms of the way they are organized to deal with any incident that may arise. That's the first critical component. And on that, and again looking at it from a practical standpoint, then what do you need to do? You need to be able to set up a team of people, having, for example, a clear structure from an incident management manager to a team that is able to identify incidences as they occur, to a team that is able to respond to the incidences when they do occur. I think this morning when Fidelis was talking about incidences and problems, then it means you need to have a layered approach through which you're able to then determine, once an incident hits you, then how do you go through the process of resolution? Who gets involved? And in that context, therefore, you have the first team that will come to respond to the incident, the team that will analyze, the team that will even be able then to provide a framework through which you're able to resolve the matter. And over and above that, if it's a matter that may require escalation, then you're looking at the legal process. You're looking at matters to do with who are your partners in terms of securing evidences in a manner that you can have the evidences adduced in court and your case can go through. So engagement with that party becomes very crucial. And then you need to select the landscape of those third-party people, interveners. The second component is processes. And this, again, goes to the full breadth of policies. Do you have institutional processes? Do you have institutional procedures? And so forth, including, of course, risk frameworks that help you to categorize the risks, be able to know which processes, which procedure to be followed, and so forth, until the process is fully concluded, is fully documented, and you have a way of then maintaining a repository of all incidences that do occur, because again, they feed back into how well you then be able to close issues whenever they do arise. In most cases, you find risks might repeat themselves. So when they repeat themselves, you don't have to go through the process of again mining to find out what is this problem and so forth. You should be able to have a document you can refer to. The last component, which is technology. Technology becomes very crucial in matters to do with cyber incidents, system. Practically, for all of us as as cyber experts, one of the most and the crucial objective would be to look at ways of detonating any incident before it happens. But in most cases, you may not be able to do that because some of the incidences might just pass through your systems in a way. So, in respect to technology, then you need to look at the best technologies, most modern technologies, which are able to detect for you when you're not able to physically be present, and also analyze or give you a platform through which you can analyze incidences when they do occur. Over and above, of course, your 24/7 support. I think in principle, I like to look at this as the key components and the constituent aspects of those components. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my panelists are very soft-spoken, very politically correct answers and nicely put. But, you know, at the end of a panel, I'm coming to you, I like to ask one question that was not in the, you know, the questions that you provided. So I want you to think through, you give us, we learn through experience, right? One of an incident that you've handled, what the incident was and how you handled it. As we talked to Mr. Fidelis here, you talked about the triage process being very, very important to any IR plan. Maybe you can tell us why a triage process is very, very key to any company or organization.
The importance of a triage is twofold.
Can you hear him?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
Okay. The importance of triage is twofold. The first one is the person who comes into contact with the threat to analyze the threat and identify it is indeed a threat is one of your best defenses. Because if he does a bad job, then the threat will get through your system. So you really need to know as early as possible that this is a threat, and that triage is where you identify that this is a potential threat. That is one. The second one is that the resource you put there, depending on whether he is a very good skilled resource, will tell you the success of how you will respond to it. Because most of these malwares, some of them are actually not standard malware. There are new things that come all the time. So you want somebody who can quickly identify a pattern and be able to identify that this is potentially a threat and sift it out of the system and put in a process to respond. So if you don't get that right, then you will find the number of incidences that you will deal with are unnecessarily high because you didn't have that process.
Yeah, that's true. So that's an analyst, the role.
It's more like an analyst, but a first frontline analyst who will quickly analyze this and say, is this a threat? Or who will receive a threat from a customer, because a consumer can call and say, I am seeing 1, 2, 3. The person who listens to that and decides this is a threat or this is not a threat is the one who will determine whether that threat becomes a problem or whether it is something that they can be dealt with easily.
All right, okay, thank you. It's very important. I think maybe KSFA has the roles, the triaging component. Is it part of the association or not? Is it?
Yeah, we have a very well documented framework and structures in place. For instance, to be able to facilitate that process, because that process can be captured theoretically. And if you do that, you may not be able to achieve or to have any outcome. Remember, in a cyber incidence environment, or when you experience a cyber breach, it is not usually about stories. You don't talk stories a lot. And one of the reasons, one of the maybe beauty about cyber breaches from the business perspective is that the board may not have to meet and approve a budget. So when an organization experiences a cyber breach, they approve the budget immediately. So so many organizations, they have the triage as a documented process. But you need tools for you to validate the authenticity of the breach. You need a tool. Is this tool free? Are you going to purchase? So for us, what we have done, we have actually built a cyber threat intelligence framework which has tools, and we have documented tools where most of our members and also customers who reaches out, we actually provide these tools for free, and also we also teach them how to use them. So when responding to a cyber breach or a cyber incident, we are able to utilize those tools and also assist the technical team to be part of that process. Yes. But unfortunately, and this is what is on the ground, especially for the SME, unfortunately, most IT people, maybe it will take some time to learn, most IT people, they panic. Regardless of whether they have done simulations before or not, the default setting after any cyber breach is there is that aspect of panic. I don't know whether it is an inherent thing that every time there's a breach, there is that aspect of panic. And immediately you panic, you are going to do a number of things that are not right. You are going to start doing forensic on the primary data that you know that has been attacked, or you are going to plug in the secondary site and you have not sorted the primary site and the secondary site is going to be attacked. I mean, so it requires, you know, it requires some sort of insights and wisdom. Yes. But above everything, you have to make sure that you have tools, and those tools, they are the one to make sure that that process of triage brings out an outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Process.
Yeah, and I think the panic, this is human nature, yeah? Just in case of anything, first run, then try to figure out what happened. Have you been in town and people start running and then you just run and it's Kanjo who are running after people who are selling clothes and you are just a normal person. Anyway, so we'll take questions from the audience. I'll do four questions, and then after that we'll hear about some of the incidences that the team has actually handled. We'd like to know from experience what to do. Yeah, I know of an organization that got attacked. They were losing money by the minute, so the first thing the organization did was turn off everything, which is usually first phase of an incident. And then since business had to continue, I think they had lost around 10 million. And then after a few hours, the CEO is like, okay, we need to continue. Business needs to continue. So what are they going to do? They reboot everything, and they lost 50 million. Yeah. I don't know how to, those are people that need your help, yeah? So questions from the audience, we have two there.
Thank you. My name is John Kiaria. I am a finalist in the Huawei and CA Cybersecurity Bootcamp. And I have two questions. One goes to KSAT, and it's just a simple question. She has given us some kind of incidences that they deal with. That includes the scams via the Google Forms, and also maybe a leakage of a critical photo to the social media. And my question is, what process and where do we report these kind of cyber incidences? The other one is a general question, and it goes to the panelists. During the legal process and the incidents have happened, at what point do you involve the forensics department? Is it when we are experiencing an active attack, the incident is happening, or is it after you have recovered from the incidents? And if you involve the forensics department, what kind of an access do you give them to your systems? Is it the full access to your systems and information of the organization, or is it just the process that has been compromised? Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. That's an amazing question. So you have two questions, one for the KSAT. No, you can answer after everybody has asked. And the other one, I think, Mr. Fidelis, you'll take that one? Yeah. Or forensics, yeah. Okay. Next question.
Hello, my name is Kachiku Munyam from Cybersecurity finalist in the Huawei Bootcamp. So my general question is to the panel. In the KSAT Q1 2022 report, you speak about targeted specialized groups like Conti and Lockbit attacking small and medium-sized enterprises. My question is, as in the industry, there's a lot of proliferation of ransomware as a service and fraud as a service tools. How safe are we when these tools are being utilized by AI and machine learning? How future-proof are our businesses and our technology companies, especially startups in fintechs? Because these are the ones which are being attacked by such tools, if they are readily available in the market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take that one. All right. The Huawei, you have fantastic students. Eh? The bootcamp had fantastic students. 2 more questions from the audience. No? Okay. No questions? Okay. Let's start with the KSAT question.
You can, okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll start with the one which, the second question about the organized group, also about the ransomware. At National KSAT, what we do is, the quarter 1 report that is talking about, what we usually do is that we go with an overview, okay? We just give an overview of what is happening in the sector and all that. But for the comfort of, I don't know what is his name, please note that we usually share the technical report, which is to a particular organization. Because at National KSAT, we only don't wait for somebody to report to us. We do proactive detection. So our members usually get those advisory, real-time advisory, technical, actually very technical advisory when we get, when their networks are targeted. So we usually give them real-time advisories to them. So then, because of the nature of cybersecurity, we cannot just start talking about organization X. Of course, them they know, they have patched their system and all that, but for us, we work because cybersecurity is about trust. Once you lose that trust from your member, you're gone. So we work closely with our members, we share those ones, the ransomware. How secure are we? We work with critical information infrastructures, and those critical information infrastructure actually give service to Kenyans. So when we give those advisories, I believe by extension, we are securing them, so they don't need to panic. Okay, about
you was reporting. Where
the reporting. Yeah. Okay, for the forensic, no.
No, he asked for incidences. Like
where you report. Do you want me to talk about the forensic or?
No, talk about the.
All right, so where can you report? Okay, we have a portal, www.cirt.go.ke, that is www.ksat.go.ke. There is a form there where when you open that website, you will see report an incident, report a vulnerability. You can report anonymous. You don't need to give us your details if you have something to, to talk to us about. You can also put your details depending on you. So also we have hotlines, that is 0703 042 700. Also you can write emails to us through incident@ksat.go.ke. You can also write to us, because from most of our members, when they require like forensic analysis of those incidents, they usually write to us so that we can give them evidence. So they write to us, to Director General, Communication Authority of Kenya, PO Box 14443 00800 Nairobi.
So you can use a dialer, you can email, you
Yeah,
can
you
go
can
there,
do
you can
everything.
post. Yeah. So
Yeah, you can even walk to our offices
yeah.
on Wayaki Way, Communication Authority of Kenya. Thank you.
And there's an app.
Ah, yeah, sorry for that. And I'm glad that at least there are people who knows we have app.
Yes.
So we have KSAT app. So you can go to store.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on whether Apple or Android. So you can also report to us through that. We receive them.
Okay, and I'm guessing
Thank you
that
very
the
much.
person who asked that question, that's the answer you were looking for. Yeah, because the post office. So there are these things where you used to write letters, yeah, on a piece of paper, and then you post it, like put it somewhere, and then it will take, how many days it used to take?
Now, long time.
Long
Are you
time.
talking about long time or now? Now it's
Yeah.
much easier.
Much easier means
Yeah.
1 day or 2 days.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very long time for us.
But when we have email,
Yeah.
why not?
Why not? Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
definitely. Thank you. The other question for Fred and John. Yeah, forensic question.
Okay. I want also to acknowledge the KSAT for the valuable relationship that we have had over the years. I can confirm positively that we have forwarded issues and cases that customers have raised to them, and they have successfully prosecuted or executed those specific issues. So we want to acknowledge them for that. So on the forensic part, briefly, because in the interest of time, every time we engage, let's say there's a cyber breach, so the victim or the organization want a solution. The key question they will ask, who did this? And out of experience, and for those who have interest in forensics, in most of the cases, do not commit yourself to tell the customer that you are going to tell them who hacked them, because that will not be possible. You can only add value into that process. When you tell them that you are going to, the other day we did one, then we found out the person who invited us is actually the same person who initiated the same thing. So they are unable to explain, yet they are the ones supposed to pay us, yet they are actually the one who orchestrated the attack. So when we talk of the forensic part, it is also good to know of the perspective, because when you start that process of trying to understand what happened, it is good to know who is the consumer of the report. Is it going to go to the court, or is it going to be consumed by the board, for instance? Or is it for internal usage? If it is for the court, from the start, you must make sure that you observe the forensic principles, the key being the chain of custody, so that your evidence, you package the report in form of an evidence, such that it will be admissible in the court of law. So if a forensic team, let's say the company has a forensic team, you engage them right from the start, because these are the people, for instance, who are going to start in the court of law, assuming they are certified, they are qualified, they have experience, and they have training. If you want to call in people from external side, also you need to consider whether to engage them right from the start. But if you are talking of the police, for instance, I will share the case as we wind up on that part. If you want to engage the police, that is another conversation altogether. But it is wise to make sure that to have proper planning. So when there is a cyber breach, do not panic. Make sure that you explore the team that you need to have. And one of the key team that you need to have is a skill called forensics skill. That must be there right from the start. So let's hear from my colleagues here.
Thank you. Maybe you can also give us the incidents, make it short. We'll not get, it's a closing remark as well for you.
Okay, let me share that. Just very briefly. So about 2 months ago, we received a request. Some money was transferred. It's a SACCO, they have integrators. No, it is an integrator. They provide services for the SACCO. So there's a way that a transaction is supposed to travel right from the circle into the integrator, into one of the mobile service provider where they have a wallet. But these guys, they breached the IT person's computer, and they were able to bypass the circle side. So they came direct into the integrator side. They generated some transactions, APIs, which now successfully was executed through the mobile service provider. So after we went there, did a number of things, the triage, all those things, we were unable to understand what is happening. But we looked at the IT person's computer, and that's why we realized the machine has been breached. After doing some forensic analysis, imaging, all those things, so we were able to identify a public IP, which was somehow very unique. And unfortunately, the organization, being an SME, they don't have a firewall, yet they are providing very critical services to circles, you can imagine. So we were not able to get more information, more insights from the firewall. So what we did is that we conducted our own. This is where now you need skills, like offensive security skills. You need to know about penetration testing. So this is where now we tried now to do a number of things on this specific public IP. So you are able to know where the IP is hosted, requested for more information from this specific provider, the data center, and the data center said that the IP is owned by a Kenyan. Although the IP is hosted, I think, in Germany, but they told us, if you need information regarding this specific machine or IP, you have to route through the police. So when you go to the police, most of our police stations, and I don't want to condemn them, they are not well capacity built. As an association, we have done a number of capacity building in the police station, local police stations. So after that, we went to the DCI. Fortunately, they agreed to do a letter to the data center. So they requested for the data, and the data arrived. We were able to be given the information that the person used to sign up for the VPS. And this VPS, what he has been doing with that VPS, they hack into circles, into integrators, then they do something called, they do reverse shells. So they hack, then they do some shells. I'll not be very technical there. And that is how they are able to exfiltrate data into that cloud. And as we speak, we have been able to identify the person, but now that requires private investigation and criminal investigation skills. We are not authorized to do that. And this is where now the police comes in. It is good to build relationship with the police officers and also with the DCI. And of course with the KSAT, because there is a time that they will also add value into that process. So in summary, that is a very genuine case that also you as an SME, you can become a victim. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. Please keep it short. Mr. John Washer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'll just say a sentence about forensics, because there is something he asked about, how much do you expose? So two things. If it's an internal forensics team, I think you have more leeway to the data that they can access because they're part of the organization. However, if you're dealing with an outsourced firm or consultant, then you might want to abstract. But those are the things you define in an SLA. So that's, I believe Fred has covered most of the other issues about forensics. The other question that was asked by the other gentleman, and I love that question because it shows me that you guys are thinking about the right things. And the story, we call them SOC stories. The story I wanted to share is actually in alignment with what he asked about ransomware as a service, advanced persistent threats. Those crazy hacks that you don't hear about every day. So the way we are trying to deal with that is through a myriad of steps. It's not a very linear direction. We will deal with this by doing this one action. So the first one is acknowledging that we have an acute skills shortage. So the quality of analysts that we need to triage and pick out patterns that may be suggestive of a threat, the guys who can do that, they're quite limited. And I'm happy when we have boot camps to train guys, to be able to see patterns that will help organizations in the future pick out on threats. So that's the first one. The second one is the IR plan that we've spoken about. The third one is acknowledging and understanding and appreciating how threats actually work. And this is where I think for all of you guys who are doing the boot camp, take time and understand the offensive side of cybersecurity as well as the defensive side, because that adversary tradecraft will help you. It's like, how will you stop a thief when you don't know the techniques that they're using? Or how will you defend, or how will you investigate when you do not understand how a certain threat is perpetrated? So that understanding is very critical. So to what he asked about artificial intelligence and ransomware as a service, so that's a very good question, because the kinds of threats that we're seeing nowadays are those that are perpetrated by an artificial intelligence program. And we are seeing malware or ransomware that can notice that you have an antivirus or studies how your antivirus works and is able to manipulate itself to avoid detection. So if you're relying on traditional security solutions, then you're at a loss, because you're now up against very powerful forces. Now, some of the ways that we're dealing with that is we're shifting our investigations from the traditional analyst looking at a screen to behavioral analytics. So we're looking at down to details like, if we baseline and notice that you're used to using a certain IP or a certain browser or a certain kind of keyboard, or you log in or you use systems between a certain and certain time, and you deviate from that pattern, then we look at that as a flag. Because the reason why we are going that route is the threats are becoming so sophisticated, and in a few occasions we've seen them beat some of the best antivirus solutions, firewalls, and so on.
Yes.
So when we focus on other aspects of trying to nail down those threats, then we have chances of being more successful. So I will invite that gentleman to look at, among other tools, and I believe, Fred, you can share your framework, look at a tool called ASOA. So ASOA, we're using ASOA for defining use cases that pretty much they can run automatically, from detection all the way to remediation, depending on what the threat is.
Yeah.
So we are eliminating human involvement, and because ASOA can also leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence. So we are using our time to figure out how does this threat work, define a use case. And when that use case is triggered, then a certain step or certain steps are taken by that SOA tool that an analyst can then review and validate.
Okay.
But you have some level of control. So to an actual incident that we've dealt with along those lines is one we call DGA. In full, that's a domain-generated algorithm. So what that is, so I'll pick up from something Fred said. So I won't go through the details of how this organization was breached. So they've been breached. And at the point when we were invited, we can see that they're breached, because we can see there's an open line of communication between a machine in the environment and a malicious IP. So we call that a command and control server.
Yeah.
What was tricky about that situation is the CNC server kept rotating its address, and it does that in milliseconds. So, just so that we make this very simple, assuming that Washira's machine in company X is hacked by someone somewhere in China, and we can see from firewall logs or antivirus logs or wherever that the address of that hacker IP is x.com, just to put it very plainly. Now in 2 milliseconds, it changes, it's x1.com. Another millisecond, it changes again. So you can see the attack, but you can't really block it because those guys are rotating the address, very quickly. So you notice you can't sit and keep clicking block because it's even faster than you. So we had to think about a very creative way of combating that kind of threat. And because it's very complicated, I'll save you the trouble. But this is something that we can gauge after.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you very much. To Mr. George, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about the Alex Mutoko situation. I know we are, might want to know, but that's up to you if you're comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll pick a case which is not in court, because you've had a number of cases which are in court.
Okay.
But just to give the audience a practical example of what one of the attacks we suffered was around where we have both, of course, internal and external, people coming together for a common objective. And the common objective is to actually compromise some of our systems so that they can be able to have something happen. In this case, what was the problem was that there was this taxpayer who needed to do a tender, and he owed the government some money in form of taxes. And since one of the prerequisites for tendering is what we call the TCC, the Tax Compliance Certificate, then this fellow has to look for somebody, an internal person, to then see how can you help me. Of course, the Kenyan way, this idea. And what therefore happened is that this officer was very good in IT, on one hand, at the same time he's a tax officer. We recruit all skills anyway. So he was able to get a malware installed in a computer, not his, but for somebody else, and be able to steal credentials for that other user. And then subsequently use those credentials to go and waive the taxes that are due, and therefore enable the system to automatically generate what we call a TCC, the Tax Compliance Certificate. And since it looks legit, the fellow went ahead and give to the tenderer, so that the tenderer can then tender. And the first step is, when that happened, was not to panic. Like I mentioned earlier, KRA never loses a cent. So the first step was, don't panic. Let's follow this matter, because having done for one taxpayer, he's going to do for a second one, and a third one. So we moved swiftly, installed cameras at night, because we needed to make sure that we're able to see who comes to visit him, how is the whole process actually executed. And I will tell you, in a matter of 2 weeks, we're able to get that matter fully put into rest.
Wow.
And subsequently, the officer, together with the external party, including the taxpayer, all of them then are held to account and money recovered. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Betrayed by his own greed, eh? Yeah, we say when you're stealing, don't steal from your own government, eh? Yeah, it's a very, very bad thing. For our case, that I know you have a lot of incidences, but try and keep it short, like very, very short, please.
Yeah, okay. So, maybe if I talk about others, which they are out there, so it's not wise. Some are in court and some. So I'll just give just a simple example. We received a request. An e-commerce platform has been impersonated. So what this guy did is he just changed one letter and set up.
In the domain?
Yes, the same domain. Okay. So the guys were you know, it sells different things.
Yeah.
I don't want to say which one. We have to protect our members and our customers.
Yes.
So when we went and checked, we did the analysis. We realized that they've just changed one, and you know, for the users out there, they will not be able to know.
Yeah.
So they will keep on subscribing. You buy something online, and you're like, why is my things are not coming? And you've already paid some of them. That is, right now I think they are saying pay on delivery. At least we really sensitize people.
Yeah.
I also want to mention, before I go, 1 minute, actually because of all those things which were going on, we really trained, we certified our members on incident handling. We actually pay them for training, for even exam. And I'm sure we have a number of both private and government officers here who have benefited from that. So after realizing, because it's a lot through social media, through e-commerce, a lot of conning, fraud going on.
That's true.
Yeah, so what we did is, fortunately, the domain was within the Kenya, so we were able to assist that person, the company, to regain, and also we were able to follow, because at the back end, we are able to get the mobile number they have integrated on that platform, where the money was going, because they tell you to pay through X, you know, the money, the mobile money. Yeah, so I don't want to say which one. So mobile money. So we're able to get actually all those money back for those people who have been conned. Yeah.
Oh, the government is watching.
But we have created a lot of awareness, and it is very clear from even our panel here. Incident response requires coordination, collaboration, trust, very important.
Yes.
I cannot do it alone.
It's true.
The government cannot do it alone without private sector. We need each other.
Yes.
We need each other. And the nature of cybersecurity is borderless. We need other countries. There is no time you can say I am secure, because somebody from, I can give an example, Europe, can sit there. As far as they have internet and the computer, they can hack into systems which are in Kenya. So we really need to collaborate with everyone.
Yes.
And as National KSAT, we really try to embrace that. And we are also encouraging even the members who are there. We encourage to be our ambassadors. And I've already talked about where you can report and all that. Let's work together.
Thank you.
Let's work together.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Being in and I know even the KENIC guys, they handle the infringement for domain. You know, if somebody is trying to own your company with another K domain, they do handle that. So thank you very much.
I forgot to say that KENIC are our members also.
Yes, they are. They're seated.
So we work with them. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fidelis, incidents as we conclude, please. Yeah.
There are too many incidences, I'll tell you, but I think they follow more or less the same.
Okay.
I had promised to tell them about an incident to problem resolution.
Yes.
From my experience, and indulge me because it might show how old I am. It was the days we used to have mainframes. We used to call them mainframes. All the reports used to be printed in a server room with a computer room, and it was one dedicated printer. It was a very, very big printer, as big as that podium. Used to print those papers we used to call continuous flow fan-fold paper. And so we noticed at the end of the month, when we are printing reports like invoices and statements, because we used to do them batch processing, very long runs, hours printing documents, cartons of paper. This printer would fail. After maybe 1.5 hours of printing, the printer would fail. And then we would sit down, and maybe after 3 hours, you start and it starts printing again. So we would report this as an incident. Every month we would report as an incident, until one day our manager got fed up. So we wrote to the computer company. It's no longer operating in its original name, but anyway, it's still in business today. And the engineers came. And they looked at this printer, they tried fixing it. Every time it is still a problem. They replaced what is known as the circuit boards. Until now, everything was replaced except the casing, because they kept replacing a component and it still doesn't work.
Yeah.
So after 6 months, we decided, okay, I think we need to relook at this situation afresh. And this is why you need to look at, not every problem you have is a technology problem. Yeah. So we analyzed the reports at the end of the month printing, and we discovered that one operator who's always on duty when this report is printed, he always finishes his reports. The printer never fails, and he always finishes his reports. The other operator who comes, because we used to have 2 operators, he'll print for 1.5 hours, and he tells us the printer failed. So now we called this guy who doesn't finish his reports, and we asked him, how is it you are able to finish your reports and this other guy doesn't? The guy wouldn't tell us. So it was escalated to management until it became a HR issue, because now the manager said, you are the one who's sabotaging your colleague so that he gets fired because he doesn't finish his printing. Yeah. So after some time, the guy told us, okay, guys, listen, I'm not a malicious guy. If you give me a waiver, I will actually tell you what I do. So we told him, yeah, our interest is to fix the problem. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. Just tell us what you do. So he told us, when this printer stops printing, I go to the back and I kick it. And it starts printing again. So we called the engineers and we told them, this operator tells us when this printer fails to print, he goes to the back and he kicks it and it starts printing. So the engineers went and they discovered there is a cable. Those of you who have done electrical and electronics, there's something called a ground wire that grounds the circuit board to the casing to create the chassis ground. Apparently this wire was loose. So when this printer prints for 1.5 hours, it becomes hot and then it disconnects. And when it disconnects, the printer stops printing. Then after some time, it cools down and then it connects. And so now he's able to print. But now when this guy goes and kicks, he destabilizes the thing and it connects and it connects. So for 6 months, we've been looking at this problem, and the only solution was, had we kicked this thing? So we quickly soldered that and we solved the problem.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you so much. I think we're going to end on that high note. Yeah? Sorry? The what? Oh, the link to... Okay. The solution is kicking.
Sorry about that. So the link that I said is for those who are interested, of course. So we are building the threat intelligence platform for people to be uploading there and all that. So it is threats.cybermonitor. Cyber is CYBA. Cyber monitor as one word. Not cyber, CYBER, but CBYA monitor.co.com. So threats.cybermonitor.com. So that is what we are building for our local threat intelligence platform. Yeah. The only issue there, it is using a self-signed certificate. So you have to accept that notification. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for our fantastic panelists as they exit the podium. Asanteni sana. I love the incidences. Very funny. Yeah. Group here? No. Outside, yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you. That was an amazing panel. Very, very informative, very great. Cyber incidences, by the way, the rule has changed. It's not if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. And it's coming. You're not prone, like we thought COVID-19 was only going to affect, white people. And then it came. Yeah, yes. So thank you very much. So that was the end of the first panel. So now we take our tea break till 11:30, and then we come back for the next, the next panel the last panel of the day, and I think the simulation is in regard to the incident response. I have a very strong feeling that's what's coming, so what Mr. Fidelis has organized for us. So same location we had tea yesterday is where we are having today, so exit as we have our tea break. Thank you very much. You're free to leave.